The morning sun rose over the golden fields of Kepler 442b, painting the endless wheat-like crops in warm yellow light. The plants swayed gently in the soft breeze, their tall stems heavy with grain that would feed millions across the galaxy. This was home to the Verdani, a peaceful people who looked like walking trees with bark-like skin and leaves that changed color with their moods. Elder Thornweave stood at the edge of New Grove City, watching the farmers tend their crops. His bark was old and weathered, marked with the deep lines that came from 300 years of life. His leaves had turned the soft gold color that meant he was content. The Verdani had built their cities to grow from the earth itself, with living walls of intertwined branches and roofs made of massive leaves that opened to catch the morning light. The children played among the crop rows, their young voices carrying on the wind. Their leaves were bright green with joy as they chased each other between the stalks. Some of the older children helped their parents, learning the ancient ways of making plants grow bigger and stronger. The Verdani had shared this gift with many worlds, teaching other species how to grow enough food so no one would go hungry. Thornweave smiled as he watched them. The Verdani had never known war. They had no weapons except farming tools. They had no armies except the volunteers who helped during harvest time. When other species fought, the Verdani would send food and medicine to both sides. They believed that kindness could solve any problem, that growth was better than destruction. That morning, like every morning for the past 50 years, the great communication dish at the center of the city sent out peaceful messages to the galaxy. They shared news about their crops, offered help to any world that needed food, and sent their beautiful growing songs that could make flowers bloom. Just by hearing them, Thornweave was listening to the morning reports when everything changed. The first sign was the light. The golden sunlight suddenly became dim, as if clouds had covered the sky. But when Thornweave looked up, he saw something that made his leaves turn the dark blue color of fear. The sky was filled with ships, massive black ships that blocked out the sun itself. The ships were unlike anything the Verdani had ever seen. They looked like giant insects made of metal, with sharp edges and glowing red lights. Some were as big as mountains, casting shadows over entire cities. Smaller ships buzzed around them like angry wasps, their engines leaving trails of red fire in the sky. The communication officer, a young Verdani named Seedling Brightbark, ran to Thornweave with panic in his voice. His leaves had turned completely black with terror. Elder, we are receiving signals from the ships. They demand our immediate surrender. Thornweave felt his own leaves darkening. What do they want? They call themselves the Scarf Dominion. They say this world now belongs to them. All Verdani are to report to collection points for work assignment. The words made no sense to Thornweave. Work assignment? The Verdani worked because they loved to grow things, not because someone forced them. Send a reply, he said. Tell them we are a peaceful people. Ask them what they need. Perhaps we can grow it for them. Brightbark's voice shook as he sent the message. The reply came back in seconds, spoken in a harsh voice that sounded like grinding metal. Peaceful species are weak species. You will work in our mines or you will die. You have 1 hour to begin surrender. Across the world, similar messages were being received in every city. The Scarf ships began to descend from orbit, landing in the great fields and crushing the crops under their massive weight. The ships opened like metal flowers, and from inside came the Scarf themselves. They were horrible to look at. Each Scarf stood as tall as 2 Verdani, with 4 arms ending in sharp claws. Their bodies were covered in black shells like giant beetles, and their faces had too many eyes and mandibles that clicked when they spoke. They moved in perfect coordination, as if they all shared the same mind. The Scarf soldiers spread out from their ships, carrying weapons that shot beams of red light. When the beams touched the living walls of Verdani cities, the wood turned black and crumbled to ash. When they touched the crops, entire fields withered and died in seconds. Thornweave watched in horror as the Scarf began to round up his people. The Verdani did not resist. They had no weapons and no knowledge of fighting. When young Verdani tried to run, the scarf caught them easily with their 4 arms. When parents tried to protect their children, the red beams turned them to ash. Send out the emergency signal, Thornweave ordered. Contact the Galactic Cooperative. Tell them we need help. Brightbark worked frantically at his communication station. I am sending on all emergency frequencies, Elder. The signal is going out to every world in the cooperative. The Galactic Cooperative was supposed to protect all peaceful species. It was made up of hundreds of different worlds that had agreed to help each other. The Verdani had been members for over a century, always giving food and help when other worlds needed it. Surely the cooperative would come to help them now. The first replies came within hours. The responses filled Thornweave with hope at first. Then, with growing despair, from the Altarian Republic, we have received your distress call. This matter will be discussed at the next council session in 6 weeks. From the Centauri Alliance, military intervention requires approval from 3 subcommittees. Expected processing time is 4 to 6 months. From the Vegan Trade Federation, we cannot risk our shipping routes. The Scarf Dominion controls 12 systems. This is not economically viable. Message after message came in, all saying the same thing in different ways. The galaxy's great powers would talk about helping the Verdani, but they would not actually do anything. They had their own interests to protect, their own people to think about. The Verdani were just farmers on a distant world. By the end of the first day, half of New Grove City had been destroyed. The Scarf had built a large metal structure in the center of the city where they were forcing captured Verdani to work. The beautiful living buildings were being torn down and replaced with ugly metal boxes. The great fields that had fed so many worlds were being strip-mined for rare metals. Thornweave had been captured along with most of the city's leaders. They were held in a metal cage barely big enough for them to stand. Through the bars he could see Scarf soldiers forcing his people to dig deep holes in the earth with crude tools. Any Verdani who moved too slowly was struck with metal rods that sent painful electric shocks through their bodies. "Why are you doing this?" "Thornweave," asked one of the Scarf guards. "We would have shared anything you needed. We have always been friends to all species." The guard's many eyes focused on him with cold interest. "Friendship is weakness. Cooperation is inefficiency. Strong species take what they need. Weak species serve or die." "But what about the Galactic Cooperative? They will come to stop you." The Scarvith's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. "The cooperative talks and argues and makes committees. We act. By the time they decide to do something, this world will be empty of useful resources and your species will be extinct." As the days passed, Thornweave realized the Scarf was right. More messages came from the cooperative, but they were all the same. Committees were being formed. Studies were being done. Diplomatic solutions were being explored. But no ships came. No help arrived. The Scarf were efficient in their cruelty. They had done this before on many worlds. They knew exactly how to break a peaceful species. They separated families, putting parents and children in different work groups so they could not comfort each other. They destroyed anything beautiful or meaningful to the Verdani. The great libraries of growing songs were burned. The sacred groves where the Verdani elders meditated were cut down for building materials. Worst of all, they were slowly poisoning the planet itself. The Scarf mining machines dumped toxic waste into the soil. The air became thick with black smoke from their factories. The plants that were not destroyed by mining began to sicken and die from the pollution. Kepler 442b, which had been a garden world full of life, was becoming a dead wasteland. After 2 months of occupation, Thornweave had given up hope. Half his people were dead from overwork, starvation, or execution. The other half were slowly dying in the mines and factories. The planet that had been their paradise was being murdered before their eyes. The last message from the Galactic Cooperative had arrived 3 weeks ago. It said that a fact-finding mission would be sent when conditions permit and that all diplomatic channels remain open. It was meaningless words from people who lived in safety while the Verdani died. Thornweave sat in his cage. watching another group of Scarf ships arrive in orbit. These carried more mining equipment, more soldiers, more tools of destruction. His leaves had long ago turned the gray color of despair and had never changed back. Brightbark, who had somehow survived the first weeks of occupation, was still trying to send out distress calls when he could. But his messages were weaker now. Sent from hidden transmitters the Scarf had not yet found. "Elder," he whispered one night, "I picked up something strange today. A new signal, very faint, not from any cooperative world. Thornweave barely had the energy to care anymore. What did it say?" It was not a message to us. It was between ships far away. But the signal was strong, and it was moving fast. Faster than any ships we know about. "Probably more raiders," Thornweave said, "coming to pick over what the Scarf leave behind." But Brightbark shook his head. "No, Elder, the signal was different. The language was unknown, but there was something else. Music? Music?" The signals had music mixed in with the communications. Growing songs, but not ours. Different music, but beautiful. As if whoever was singing them understood what growing songs are for. Thornweave felt the smallest spark of something that might have been hope, but he pushed it away. Hope was too painful now. It does not matter. No one is coming to help us. The galaxy has made that clear. High above them, in the cold darkness of space, more Scarf ships continued to arrive. Their lights burned red against the stars as they prepared to finish what they had started. Soon there would be nothing left of the Verdani but memories. And no one in the galaxy seemed to care enough to preserve even those. The Verdani had believed that kindness and cooperation could solve any problem. They had believed that the Galactic cooperative would protect them. They had believed that help would come when they needed it most. They had been wrong about everything. Sarah Chun rubbed her tired eyes and took another sip of cold coffee. It was her third cup in the last 4 hours, but she needed to stay awake. The communication station aboard the human exploration ship Defiant Curiosity was her responsibility. And space was full of signals that needed watching. Most of the signals were boring. Trade reports from merchant ships. Weather updates from colony worlds, navigation beacons marking safe routes through asteroid fields. Sarah had been doing this job for 3 years, and she could identify most signal types, just by their sound patterns, but tonight something was different. The signal had been repeating for hours. It was faint and distorted, coming from somewhere, far beyond human space. At first, Sarah thought it might be a damaged navigation beacon or a broken communication relay. But when she cleaned up the signal and ran it through the translation computer, she realized it was much more serious. It was a distress call. The message was in a language the computer did not recognize. But the translation program was smart. It could figure out meaning from context and pattern. After an hour of work, Sarah had enough to understand what she was hearing. "Help us. They came from the dark between stars. They destroy everything beautiful. They take our children for slaves. The sky burns with their ships. Please, anyone who can hear this, help us. We are the Verdani of Kepler 442b. We have always been friends to all life. Help us." The message repeated every 20 minutes. Sarah checked the timestamps and felt sick. The signal had been broadcasting for over 2 months. 2 months of calling for help with no answer. Sarah ran the signal through the computer again to get more information. The Verdani were a peaceful plant-like species. Their world was rich in rare metals and perfect for growing food. They had been members of the Galactic cooperative for over 100 years and had never been in a war. The attackers were called the Scarf Dominion. Sarah had heard that name before in intelligence reports. They were raiders who moved from system to system, taking everything useful and leaving nothing alive. They had destroyed dozens of worlds in the last 50 years. Captain Rivera should see this, Sarah said to herself. She copied the signal and translation to a datapad and walked to the bridge. Captain Marcus Rivera was studying star charts when Sarah found him. He was a man in his 50s with gray hair and tired eyes. He had been exploring space for 20 years, longer than almost any other human. His ship was small and old, but his crew trusted him completely. "Captain, I need to show you something." Sarah said. Rivera looked up from his charts. What is it, Chun? Sarah handed him the datapad. Distress signal from a planet called Kepler 442b. They are under attack by something called the Scarf Dominion. Rivera read the translation carefully. His face grew dark as he understood what had happened. How long has this signal been broadcasting? 2 months, sir, and there is more. I checked the Galactic Cooperative Communication Networks. They received the same signal. Multiple distress calls over the past 2 months. What was their response? Sarah felt angry just thinking about it. Committee meetings, diplomatic studies, risk assessments. They talked about it for weeks, but never sent any help. Rivera was quiet for a long moment. He had dealt with the Galactic Cooperative before. They were good at talking and making rules, but they moved very slowly when real action was needed. By the time they decided to do something, it was usually too late. Where is this planet? Rivera asked. Sarah called up a star map on the bridge display. A red dot appeared far from human space, beyond the edge of explored territory. Here, sir. About 4 weeks' travel at maximum speed. That is outside our patrol area. Yes, sir. And outside human space entirely. Yes, sir. Rivera stared at the red dot for a long time. He was thinking about regulations and orders and the chain of command. The Defy and Curiosity was supposed to be mapping new star systems and looking for resources. They were not supposed to get involved in alien conflicts, but Rivera was also thinking about something else. He was thinking about the time when he was young and Earth had been attacked by an unknown enemy. Other species had helped humans then. Even though they barely knew anything about humanity, they had risked their own lives to save strangers. June, get Dr. Vasquez and Lieutenant Thompson up here. Sarah nodded and sent the messages. Within 10 minutes, the ship's senior officers were gathered on the bridge. Dr. Elena Vasquez was the ship's scientist. She studied alien life forms and cultures. She was young and smart and cared deeply about all living things. Lieutenant David Thompson was the security officer. He was a former soldier who had seen combat on 3 different worlds. Rivera showed them the distress signal and the translation. He watched their faces as they understood what had happened to the VERDNI. Dr. Vasquez spoke first. I know about the Verdani. They are incredible people. They have shared their knowledge of plant growth with dozens of worlds. Their techniques ended famines on at least 3 planets that I know of. What kind of people are they? Rivera asked. Peaceful, completely peaceful. They have no military at all. Their entire culture is based on growing things and helping others grow. They make music that can literally make plants grow faster and stronger. Thompson looked at the tactical data. The Scarf Dominion is bad news, Captain. Intelligence reports say they have over 2,000 ships. They strip mine entire planets and enslave or kill everyone they find. Could the Verdani fight back? No chance. These people probably do not even have weapons. From what I am reading here, they use farming tools and their bare hands for everything. Dr. Vasquez pulled up images of Verdani culture on the bridge display. Rivera saw cities that looked like living forests, with walls made of intertwined trees and roofs made of giant leaves. He saw Verdani children playing in fields of golden grain. He saw a people who had built their entire civilization around the idea of helping things grow. They gave us hybrid corn seeds 10 years ago, Dr. Vasquez said quietly. Our agricultural colonies use Verdani techniques to feed millions of people. These are good people, Captain. They have never hurt anyone. Rivera looked at the star map. Again, Kepler 442b was so far away. Even if they left right now, it would take weeks to get there. The Verdani might all be dead by then. But the signal was still broadcasting. Someone was still alive. Someone was still hoping for help. Sir, Thompson said, this is not our fight. We have orders to explore the Centauri sector and report back to Earth Command. If we leave our patrol area without authorization, we could. All face court-martial, Rivera nodded. Thompson was right about the regulations. The chain of command existed for good reasons. Ships could not just go wherever they wanted without orders. But Thompson continued. Sometimes the right thing to do is not the legal thing to do. Rivera looked at his officers. Chun was young and idealistic. She believed in helping people no matter what the cost. Dr. Vasquez was a scientist who had spent years studying alien cultures. She understood better than anyone what the galaxy was. Losing when species like the Verdani were destroyed. Thompson was a soldier who had sworn an oath to protect innocent people. "We are one small ship," Rivera said. "The Scarf have over 2,000 vessels. Even if we could get there in time, what could we do against those odds?" "We could try," Chun said. "Maybe we could evacuate some survivors. Maybe we could get word to other human ships in the area." Rivera accessed the communication system and checked for other human vessels. The nearest was the cargo ship New Frontier, 3 days away from their current position. There was also the research vessel Isaac Newton about a week out, and the patrol ship Gettysburg was somewhere in the outer rim, location unknown. "Not much of a fleet," Rivera said. "It is better than nothing," Dr. Vasquez replied. Rivera made his decision. It was not the safe decision or the smart decision or the one that would keep him out of trouble with Earth Command. But it was the right decision. Chun, send coded messages to every human ship, station, and colony within 50 light years. Priority Alpha emergency protocols. What should the message say, sir? Rivera thought for a moment. He needed something that would make other human commanders understand the situation without explaining everything over potentially monitored channels. Tell them, remember the Alamo, remember Dunkirk. Remember that sometimes the right thing to do is the hardest thing to do. Coordinates follow. The references would be clear to any human commander. The Alamo, where a small group of fighters held out against impossible odds to buy time for others. Dunkirk, where every available ship had joined a rescue mission to save soldiers trapped on a beach. Both were times when ordinary people had done extraordinary things because it was right. "Sir," Thompson said, "if we do this, there is no going back. Earth Command will want explanations." "Then we better make sure we have a good story to tell them," Rivera replied. Chin worked at her station, sending the coded messages across human space. The signals would take time to reach their destinations and more time for ships to respond. But Rivera hoped that other humans would understand what needed to be done. "Dr. Vasquez, I want you to prepare everything we know about the Scarf. Tactics, technology, weaknesses if we can find any. If we are going to do this, we need to be smart about it. Thompson, check our weapons and defensive systems. I know we are not a warship, but we have some firepower. June, keep monitoring that distress signal. If it stops broadcasting, we need to know immediately." The Defiant Curiosity changed course, turning away from its assigned patrol route and heading toward Kepler 442B. Ship's engines pushed harder than they had in months, racing across the darkness between stars. Rivera knew he was taking a huge risk. He was disobeying direct orders and potentially starting a war between humanity and the Scarf Dominion. His career would be over if this went wrong. His crew could be court-martialed. The ship could be destroyed. But he also knew something else. Humanity was still new to the galaxy. Most alien species saw humans as primitive and violent. They tolerated human presence in space but did not really respect them. This could be a chance to show the galaxy what humans were really like. Not primitive warriors, but people who would risk everything to help strangers in need. Over the next 3 days, responses began to come in from other human ships. The cargo hauler New Frontier changed course to join them. The research vessel Isaac Newton dumped its planned mission and headed for Kepler 442b. Captain Sarah Williams of the patrol ship Gettysburg sent a simple message. On our way. More ships joined them as word spread. Independent traders who owed no loyalty to anyone except their own conscience. Colonial defense vessels that left their posts to answer the call. Even some corporate ships whose captains decided that some things were more important than profit. By the end of the first week, 17 human ships were converging on Kepler 442b. It was still not enough to fight the Scarf fleet directly, but it was a start. Dr. Vasquez had been studying everything. she could find about the Scarth Dominion. What she learned was disturbing. They are a hive mind species, she told Rivera. Every individual Scarth is connected to a central command structure. They think and act as one organism, which makes them incredibly efficient in battle. Any weaknesses? Maybe, if we could disrupt their command structure, the individual soldiers might become confused or helpless. But that would require getting close to their command ships, and those are always heavily defended. Rivera nodded. It was not much, but it was something to work with. The distress signal from Kepler 442b continued to broadcast. Each day, it grew a little weaker, as if the transmitter was running out of power or being damaged. But it was still there. Someone was still alive. Someone was still hoping for help. As the defiant Curiosity raced through space, Rivera wondered if they would arrive in time. He wondered if 17 ships could make any difference against an enemy that had over 2,000. He wondered if he had just led his crew and a dozen other ships to their deaths. But he also remembered something his grandfather had told him. Long ago, sometimes you do not fight because you think you can win. Sometimes you fight because it is the right thing to do, and if you do not fight, you cannot live with yourself afterward. The Verdani had helped feed human colonies. They had shared their knowledge freely with anyone who asked. They were gardeners and artists and peaceful people who had never hurt anyone, and they were dying while the galaxy watched and did nothing. But humanity was coming. Not because they had been ordered to, not because they expected any reward, but because when good people are in trouble, you help them. That was what it meant to be human. The stars ahead grew brighter as the human ships pushed their engines to the limit, racing toward a distant world where plant people waited for help that they believed would never come. Admiral Sarah Okafor stood in the war room deep inside Earth Defense Command, staring at the massive display screen that showed human space. Red dots marked the positions of every human ship that had changed course in the last week. There were dozens of them, all heading toward the same destination, a planet called Kepler 442b that most humans had never heard of. "This is madness," said General Harrison, the head of Earth's military forces. "We have 17 ships, maybe more, flying off to fight an enemy with over 2,000 vessels. They are going to be destroyed? And for what? Some alien farmers? We have never met." Admiral Okafor was quiet for a moment. She was a tall woman with dark skin and gray hair, someone who had spent 40 years in space. She had fought in 3 wars and commanded fleets and battles that decided the fate of entire worlds. She understood military strategy better than almost anyone alive. "Have you read the reports about the Verdani?" she asked. "I have read them. They are peaceful plant people who grow food." "What does that have to do with anything?" 5 years ago, when the colony world New Kansas was hit by a crop disease, who do you think saved them? General Harrison frowned. "I do not remember." "The Verdani. They sent seeds and growing techniques that saved the entire colony. 50,000 humans would have starved without their help, and they asked for nothing in return." Admiral Okafor touched a control on the display table. The screen changed to show images from various human colonies. Fields of grain growing in impossible places, hydroponic farms feeding entire cities, agricultural stations turning desert planets into gardens. New Texas, New Brazil, New Australia, Titan Station, Europa Colony. Every single one of these places uses Verdani growing techniques. We feed 20 million people using methods they taught us for free. That still does not justify sending our ships into a hopeless battle. Admiral Okafor turned to face the general. "Have you ever heard of the Xantharian incident?" "No." 15 years ago, before you were in this job, a human exploration ship was attacked by pirates near Xantharian space. The ship was damaged and the crew was trapped. We sent a distress call to every species in the area. Admiral Okafor brought up another display, showing old communication records. The Altarians said it was not their responsibility. The Centaurians said they were too busy with trade negotiations. The Vegans said the risk was too high. 12 different species had ships close enough to help, and every one of them found a reason to do nothing. What happened? 43. Humans died while the galaxy's civilized species debated whether it was worth the trouble to save them. The survivors were rescued eventually, but it took 6 weeks and most of them never fully recovered. General Harrison was beginning to understand. You think this is our chance to be different? I think this is our chance to show the galaxy what humans are really like. When good people are in trouble, we help them. We do not form committees or study the problem for months. We act. The communication station buzzed with an incoming priority message. The operator, a young lieutenant named Brooks, looked up with surprise. Admiral, we are receiving messages from across human space. Ship. Captains are requesting permission to join the Kepler mission. How many ships? Lieutenant Brooks checked his screen. 87 so far, ma'am. And the number is growing every hour. Admiral Okafor felt something she had not felt in years. Pride, pure, simple pride in the species she served. General, I am recommending to the United Earth Council that we make this mission official. You want to declare war on the Scarf Dominion? I want to declare that humanity stands with the innocent, that when peaceful people are attacked, we will respond. General Harrison shook his head. The Council will never approve it. Too risky, too expensive, too likely to make enemies we cannot afford to fight. Admiral Okafor smiled. Then I guess we will have to convince them. The emergency session of the United Earth Council was unlike anything in the history of human space government. Representatives from every major world and colony attended, either in person or by hologram. The debate was fierce and emotional. Ambassador Shun from the Luna colony spoke first. We barely have enough ships to defend our own worlds. We cannot afford to waste them on alien conflicts. These are not alien conflicts, replied Senator Williams from Mars. These are crimes against innocent people. If we do nothing, what does that say about human character? Representative Jackson from the Centauri colonies was angry. Character does not stop plasma cannons. Character does not protect our families when the Scarf decide to attack human worlds next. And what makes you think they will not attack? U.S. anyway? Asked Admiral Okafor. The Scarf respect only strength. If we show them we are willing to fight for our friends, they might think twice about making us their enemies. The debate continued for hours. Some representatives wanted to recall all human ships immediately. Others wanted to send the entire Earth Defense Fleet to Kepler 442b. Most wanted some middle ground that would satisfy everyone and accomplish nothing. Finally, President Martinez called for order. She was an older woman who had led Earth through 2 previous crises. She had the kind of authority that made people listen when she spoke. I have been reading reports about this situation for the past 12 hours, she said. I have also been reading about the Verdani people and what they have done for humanity. She activated a holographic display showing agricultural data from across human space. Food production on New Kansas increased by 400% after they started using Verdani techniques. The colony went from barely surviving to exporting food to 6 other worlds. Similar stories exist on dozens of human settlements. These people have helped us in practical ways that have saved millions of human lives. They did this freely, without being asked, without expecting anything in return. Now they are dying while we debate whether helping them is convenient. President Martinez paused and looked around the room at the assembled representatives. There are moments in history when a species defines itself. When we choose what kind of people we want to be, this is one of those moments. I am authorizing Admiral Okafor to coordinate with the human ships. Already en route to Kepler 442b. Any captain who wants to join this mission will be considered to be acting under official Earth defense authorization. The vote was closer than Admiral Okafor had hoped, but humanity committed to action. Within hours, the authorization codes went out to every human ship in space. Captains who had been risking court-martial were suddenly operating under official orders. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The cargo ship Big Sky dumped its load of mining equipment and converted its cargo bays into weapon mounts. The passenger liner Star Princess evacuated its tourists at the nearest station and joined the growing fleet. Even the tiny courier ship Quicksilver, barely big enough for a crew of 3, changed course for Kepler 442b. Captain Maria Santos of the heavy cruiser Buenos Aires received the authorization while her ship was on patrol near the outer colonies. She did not hesitate. Within an hour, her ship was pushing its engines to maximum speed, racing to join the others. "Why are we doing this?" asked her first officer, Commander Torres. "Because it is the right thing to do," Captain Santos replied. "And because if we do not do the right thing when it is hard, we have no right to call ourselves the good guys." The independent miners were some of the first to respond. These were rough people who worked in dangerous places and lived by their own rules. But they understood something that the politicians sometimes forgot. When someone was in trouble, you helped them. Captain Jim McKenna of the mining ship Rough Diamond was hauling or from the asteroid belt when the message came through. He looked at his crew of 12 miners and asked for a vote. "We could lose our ship," he told them. "We could lose our lives. We could lose everything we have worked for. But there are people out there who need help, and we might be the only ones who can give it." The vote was 12-0. The Rough Diamond changed course. Similar scenes played out across human space. Corporate executives authorized their security. Fleets to join the mission. Colonial governors released their defense ships. Independent traders abandoned profitable cargo runs to answer the call. Dr. Elena Vasquez, still aboard the Defiant Curiosity as it raced toward Kepler 442b, monitored the communications from the growing fleet. She had never seen anything like it in her years of studying alien cultures. "Captain Rivera, we now have over 300 ships confirmed en route." Captain Rivera looked up from the tactical displays he had been studying. 300? Are you sure?" "Yes, sir." "Everything. From heavy cruisers to cargo haulers. Some of them are not even armed, but they are coming anyway." Rivera shook his head in amazement. When he had sent out his coded message, he had hoped for maybe a dozen ships. The response was beyond anything he had imagined, but even 300 ships might not be enough. The latest intelligence reports showed that the Scarfed Dominion had over 2,000 vessels in the Kepler system. They were heavily armed and had been fighting wars for decades. Most human ships were explorers, traders, and patrol vessels. They were not designed for major fleet battles. "Dr. Vasquez, what have you learned about Scarfed tactics?" "They fight in formation always. Every ship knows its exact position relative to every other ship. They coordinate their attacks perfectly and never break formation even when taking heavy casualties." "That sounds like it would be effective." "It is, against enemies who fight the same way. But they have never fought humans before." Rivera understood what she meant. Human ships did not fight in neat formations. Human captains were independent thinkers who made their own decisions in battle. Sometimes this was a weakness, but sometimes it was a strength. "Have you found anything else?" "Yes, the Scarf have trouble adapting to unexpected situations. Their hive mind makes them efficient, but it also makes them rigid. If something happens that they have not planned for, they have difficulty responding." Rivera smiled for the first time in days. "Then we need to make sure we do things they have not planned for." Meanwhile, the Galactic Cooperative was beginning to notice what was happening. Ambassador Thylix of the Altarian Republic contacted Earth directly, demanding an explanation for human ship movements. Admiral Okafor took the call personally. Ambassador Thylix appeared on the communication screen, his blue skin flushed with the color that meant he was angry. "Admiral, your species is mobilizing what appears to be a military fleet. Under galactic law, such movements must be reported to the Cooperative Council. We are responding to a distress call, Ambassador. I believe your people received the same call 2 months ago." Thylix's skin color shifted to the pale blue that meant discomfort. "The Verdani situation is being handled through proper diplomatic channels." "How is it being handled? What ships have you sent? What aid have you provided? The situation is complex. There are legal considerations, resource allocation issues, potential ramifications for regional stability." In other words, you are doing nothing while an entire species is being murdered. That is an oversimplification of a complex situation. Admiral Okafor leaned forward in her chair. Ambassador, let me simplify it for you. Good people are dying. Bad people are killing them. We are going to stop the bad people. If that violates your procedures, I apologize for the inconvenience. Admiral, this is madness. The Scarf Dominion has over 2,000 vessels. You will only provoke them into expanding their conquests. Then they will learn that attacking innocent people has consequences. Thylex's skin turned the dark blue color of genuine fear. You could start a war that spreads across the entire galaxy. Ambassador, the war has already started. The Scarf started it when they attacked the Verdani. The only question is whether the galaxy will fight back or hide and hope the monsters go away. The conversation ended badly, with Ambassador Thylex promising to bring the matter before the Galactic Council. Admiral Okafor was not worried. By the time the Council finished debating, the human fleet would already be at Kepler 442b across human space. The final ships were joining the fleet. The heavy cruiser Washington changed course from its patrol near the vegan border. The assault carrier Eagle abandoned its training mission and raced to join the others. Even the ancient battleship Midway, supposedly retired and used only for ceremonies, powered up its engines and headed for battle. Captain Sarah Williams of the patrol ship Gettysburg was among the first to reach the meeting point. Empty system. 2 light years from Kepler 442b. She watched in amazement as ship after ship dropped out of hyperspace. Military vessels, cargo haulers, passenger ships, mining craft, exploration vessels. Every type of ship humanity had ever built. I have never seen anything like this, her first officer said. None of us have, Captain Williams replied. This is what happens when humans decide something is important. Admiral Okafor arrived aboard her flagship, the heavy cruiser Indomitable. She took command of the fleet and began organizing the diverse collection of ships into something resembling a military force. It was not easy. The ships had different speeds, different weapons, different capabilities. Some were heavily armed warships. Others were barely more than flying trucks with improvised weapons welded to their hulls. But they all had one thing in common. They were all crewed by humans who had decided that some things were worth fighting for. Admiral, reported Commander Chun from the communications station. Final count is 312 ships. Admiral Okafor looked at the tactical display showing her fleet. It was the largest group of human ships ever assembled. Not the most powerful, not the most advanced, but the largest. And every single ship was here because its crew had chosen to be here. Send a message to the fleet, she ordered. Tomorrow we jump to Kepler 442b. We do not know what we will find. There, we do not know if we can win. But we know that innocent people are suffering and we are the only ones who can help them. Tell them that the galaxy is watching. That history will remember what we do in the next few days. That we have a chance to show every species in the galaxy what humanity stands for. Tell them to get some rest. Tomorrow we find out what we are really made of. In the darkness between stars, 312 human ships prepared for battle. Their crews checked weapons, ran diagnostics, and said prayers in a dozen different languages. They knew the odds were against them. They knew they might not survive the next day, but they also knew something that their enemies did not understand. They knew that when humans fight for something they believe in, they do not fight like any other species in the galaxy. They fight like humans, and that changes everything. The edge of the Kepler system was dark and cold. For 3 months, no friendly ships had traveled these space lanes. Only the black vessels of the Scarf Dominion moved between the planets, carrying stolen resources and captured slaves back to their empire. But now something new appeared in the darkness. Flashes of light marked the arrival of ships dropping out of hyperspace. First one, then 10, then dozens. Within an hour, over 300 human vessels had gathered at the system's edge. Invisible to Scarf sensors, but close enough to see the enemy fleet, Admiral Sarah Okafor stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Indomitable, studying the tactical display. The screen showed a nightmare. Red dots filled the space around Kepler 442b, each one representing a Scarf warship. There were so many that they almost covered the planet itself. How many? She asked her tactical officer. 2,047 confirmed vessels, Admiral. Most of them are clustered around the planet. Looks like they have about 300 ships on patrol around the outer system. Admiral Okafor nodded grimly. The numbers were even worse than intelligence had predicted. But the human fleet was here now, and there was no turning back? Any sign that they have detected us? No, ma'am. We are far enough out that their sensors cannot pick us up yet. Captain Rivera of the Defiant Curiosity appeared on the communication screen. His small exploration ship had been the first to answer. The distress call, and Admiral Okafor had made him part of her command staff. Admiral, we are still receiving the Verdani distress signal. It is very weak now, but it is still broadcasting. That means some of them are still alive, Admiral Okafor sighed. Dr. Vasquez, what can you tell us about the situation on the planet? Dr. Elena Vasquez appeared on another screen. She had been analyzing every piece of data they could gather about the Scarf occupation. The signals suggest that the Scarf have established major mining operations across the planet. They are strip mining for rare metals and using Verdani slaves as workers. Based on the pattern of communications, I estimate that maybe 20% of the original population is still alive. Admiral Okafor felt anger building in her chest. 20%. The Scarf had murdered 4 out of every 5 Verdani in just 3 months. Millions of peaceful people who had never hurt anyone. Admiral, said Commander Torres from the tactical station, we have identified the Scarf command structure. They have 5 major command ships, each controlling about 400 vessels. The largest one appears to be in orbit directly above the main population center. Weapons analysis? Heavy plasma cannons on all ships. Energy shields that can absorb significant damage. Their ships are designed for long campaigns and sustained fighting. Admiral Okafor studied the enemy formation. The Scarf were arranged in perfect geometric patterns around the planet. Every ship knew exactly where it was supposed to be. It was efficient and orderly, just like everything else about the Scarf. Dr. Vasquez, you said that the Scarf have trouble adapting to unexpected situations. What exactly does that mean? Their hive mind makes them incredibly coordinated, but it also makes them inflexible. They plan their battles in advance and execute those plans perfectly. But if something happens that they did not plan for, they have difficulty changing their response. So we need to do things they have not planned for, exactly. But Admiral, there is something else you need to know. I have been monitoring Scarf communications. They have detected unusual hyperspace signatures in the outer system. Admiral Okafor felt her heart skip a beat. Do they know we are here? Not exactly. But they know something is coming. They are bringing more ships from other parts of the system to investigate. The tactical display updated to show Scarf patrol groups moving toward the human fleets. Position. About 200 enemy ships were heading their way, expecting to find maybe a dozen vessels at most. How long until they reach us? Admiral Okafor asked. 4 hours at their current speed. Admiral Okafor looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew. They were scared but determined. They knew they were about to fight the largest space battle in human history against impossible odds. Send a message to all ships. We are advancing immediately. If we wait for them to find us, we lose the element of surprise. The human fleet began moving toward Kepler 442b, 312 ships of every size and type, all heading toward a battle that would decide the fate of an entire species. The first contact came. 2 hours later, Captain Liu of the destroyer. Shanghai was leading the forward scout group when his sensors detected the approaching Scarf patrol. 50 enemy ships in perfect formation, their black hulls gleaming in the light of the distant star. Enemy contact, Liu reported to the fleet. 50 vessels, heavy cruiser class and above. They have not detected us yet. Admiral Okafor studied the tactical situation. The Scarth patrol was heading directly toward the main human fleet. In 30 minutes, they would be close enough to detect the full extent of the human force. Once that happened, the entire Scarth fleet would know exactly what they were facing. All ships implement Battle Plan Alpha. Scout groups engage the patrol. Main fleet maximum speed toward the planet. The battle began quietly. The human scout ships were small and fast, armed with missiles and railguns. They stayed at maximum range and picked their targets carefully. The Shanghai fired first. A spread of 6 missiles streaked toward the lead Scarth cruiser. The enemy ship's shields absorbed most of the damage, but the attack got their attention. The Scarth responded exactly as Dr. Vasquez had predicted. They formed up in a perfect battle line and began methodical return fire. Their plasma cannons were powerful, but they aimed at where the human ships were, not where they were going. Captain Liu grinned as he threw his ship into a spinning dive. That no Scarth commander would ever think to try? The enemy's return fire passed harmlessly through the space where the Shanghai had been a second earlier. All scout ships, random evasive patterns. Do not let them predict your movements. The human ships began dancing through space in ways that made no sense to the Scarth. They spun, rolled, accelerated, and decelerated without any apparent pattern. The enemy's perfectly coordinated fire control systems could not track targets. That moved so unpredictably, but the human ships were taking damage too. The freighter Quick Prophet took a plasma blast that destroyed her forward cargo bay. The patrol ship Vigilant lost her main engines and began drifting. The converted liner Star Explorer was hit 3 times and began venting atmosphere. We cannot hold them much longer, Captain Liu reported. We need support. Reinforcements coming, Admiral Okafor replied. Hold your positions for 10 more minutes. The second wave of human ships arrived just as the scout group was about to be overwhelmed. 20 heavy cruisers and destroyers, led by Captain Santos aboard the Buenos Aires. The Scarth patrol found themselves caught between 2 human forces. Captain Santos had studied the enemy formation and identified their weakness. The Scarth ships were so focused on maintaining their perfect battle line that they could not respond quickly to attacks from multiple directions. All ships target the command vessel in the center of their formation. Concentrate all fire. 40 human ships opened fire on a single Scarth cruiser. The enemy's shields held for almost 30 seconds before collapsing. The ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light. The destruction of their command ship sent confusion through the Scarth patrol. Without central coordination, the individual ships began firing randomly. Some tried to retreat. Others continued attacking the human scouts. A few just stopped moving entirely. Captain Santos pressed the attack. All ships, pick your targets. Do not let them reorganize. The battle lasted another 20 minutes. When it was over, 47 Scarth ships had been destroyed. The human fleet had lost 8 vessels with 12 more heavily damaged. But the real victory was not the ships destroyed. The real victory was the message that went out across Scarth communication networks. The patrol group's final transmission before being destroyed was simple but terrifying. Unknown enemy fleet. Estimated strength over 300 vessels. Engaging with unconventional tactics. Request immediate reinforcement. War Master Kethver of the Scarth Dominion received the message aboard his flagship, the massive dreadnought Death's Edge. He had been overseeing mining operations on the planet's surface when the report came in. 300 ships? He said to his tactical coordinator. What species fields 300 warships in this region? Unknown, War Master. The transmission was cut off before tactical analysis could be completed. Kethver looked at the tactical display showing his own fleet. Over 2,000 ships, the largest force the Scarth had ever assembled. Whoever these newcomers were, they would be destroyed easily. Recall all patrol groups to defensive positions around the planet. Deploy the first battle group to intercept the enemy fleet. How many ships, War Master? 500 should be sufficient. These aliens will learn what happens when they challenge the Scarth Dominion. Admiral Okafor watched the enemy response on her tactical display. 500 Scarf ships were moving to intercept the human fleet, leaving their defensive positions around the planet. "They are taking the bait," she said to her staff. "They think we are just another species that fights in formation battles." Captain Rivera nodded. Dr. Vasquez was right. They cannot adapt to tactics they have never seen before. Signal the fleet. We are going to show them something they have definitely never seen before. The main battle began 4 hours after the first contact. The Scarf fleet approached in perfect formation, 500 ships arranged in precise geometric patterns. Their plan was simple: use their superior numbers and firepower to destroy the human fleet in a single decisive engagement. The human fleet scattered. Instead of meeting the enemy in a traditional battle line, the human ships spread out across millions of cubic kilometers of space. They moved in small groups, never more than 5 or 6 ships together. When the Scarf opened fire, there were no concentrated targets for them to hit. Captain Williams of the patrol ship Gettysburg led her small group in a high-speed run around the enemy's flank. The Scarf tried to intercept her, but they had to break formation to do it. As soon as they did, Captain McKenna and his group of converted cargo ships hit them from the opposite direction. The Scarf formation began to break apart as individual ships tried to respond to multiple threats. But their hive-mind coordination system was designed for orderly battles, not chaotic melees. "All ships, Wolfpack tactics," Admiral Okafor ordered. "Pick off the stragglers. Do not let them regroup." The human ships began hunting like wolves. Small groups would identify isolated Scarf vessels and attack them from multiple angles. When the enemy tried to respond, the human ships would scatter and reform somewhere else. Captain Santos led the Buenos Aires and 3 destroyers in a direct assault on a Scarf heavy cruiser. The enemy ship's shields absorbed most of their fire, but it was forced to turn and fight, breaking away from its formation. As soon as the Scarf cruiser was isolated, Captain Liu arrived with the Shanghai and 4 other ships. They hit the enemy vessel from behind while its attention was focused on Santos. The cruiser's shields collapsed and the ship exploded. The battle raged for 3 hours. The Scarf had superior numbers and firepower, but they could not use either advantage effectively. Every time they tried to concentrate their forces, the human ships would scatter and attack from unexpected directions. But the human fleet was paying a price. The destroyer Miami was cut in half by a plasma blast. The cargo ship Big Dreams took a direct hit and simply vanished. The converted liner Royal Star was badly damaged and limping away from the battle. Captain Liu was making another attack run when disaster struck. 3 Scarf cruisers caught the Shanghai in a crossfire. The ship's shields failed and her hull began to crack. "Engineering reports critical damage," his first officer said. "We are losing life support." Liu looked at his tactical display. There was a Scarf command ship 2 kilometers away, coordinating the local enemy forces. If that ship was destroyed, the nearby Scarf would lose coordination for several minutes. "Set course for the command ship," Liu ordered. "Sir, we cannot survive another hit. We are not going to try to survive. All hands to escape pods. Prepare for ramming speed." Liu's crew looked at him with understanding. They had all volunteered for this mission knowing they might not come home. Now their captain was asking them to sacrifice their ship to save others. "Sir," said his weapons officer, "what about you? Someone has to steer the ship." "Get going." The Shanghai's crew abandoned ship in small escape pods while Yu remained on the bridge. He pointed his damaged destroyer at the Scarf command vessel and pushed the engines far beyond their safety limits. The Scarf commander saw the human ship approaching but could not believe what was happening. No species in the galaxy used ramming attacks. It was wasteful and inefficient. By the time he realized that the human captain was serious, it was too late. The Shanghai struck the Scarf command ship at nearly a quarter of light speed. Both vessels vanished in a brilliant explosion that lit up space for hundreds of kilometers. The destruction of their local command ship threw the nearby Scarf forces into confusion. Human ships that had been retreating suddenly turned and attacked. In the space of 10 minutes, 12 more enemy vessels were destroyed. Admiral Okafor watched Captain Liu's sacrifice on her tactical display. She felt sadness and pride in equal measure. The man had given his life to save his comrades, and his action had turned a losing fight into a victory. "Signal the fleet," she ordered. "Captain, Liu has shown us the way. We do not fight like any other species in the galaxy. We fight like humans." Across the human fleet, the message was received and understood. They were not going to win this battle through superior technology or numbers. They were going to win it through courage, sacrifice, and the willingness to do whatever it took to protect innocent people. The battle was far from over. Over 1,500 Scarf ships still defended the planet, and the human fleet had already lost 60 vessels. But something had changed in the last few hours. The Scarf had learned that they were not fighting another predictable enemy. They were fighting humans. And humans fought like nothing else in the galaxy. War Master Kethver stared at the tactical display in his command center, his forearms trembling with rage. In the past 6 hours, he had lost over 700 ships to an enemy force less than half the size of his advanced fleet. This was impossible. This was not how wars were supposed to work. "Status report," he commanded his tactical coordinator. "The enemy fleet has broken through our outer defenses and is approaching the planet. Their tactics are completely unpredictable. Our formations cannot respond effectively to their scattered attack patterns." Kethver's mandibles clicked in frustration. The Scarf had conquered 47 worlds using the same proven tactics. Overwhelming force applied in perfect coordination. It had never failed before. What species are we fighting? Communications. Analysis suggests they are called humans. We have limited information about them. They appear to be a relatively new spacefaring species from the Outer Rim. Primitive aliens using crude tactics, Kethver decided. They have been lucky so far, but luck ends when it meets superior numbers. Deploy the entire fleet, crush them completely. All ships, War Master? Every vessel. I want these humans destroyed. So completely that no trace of them remains. Let this be a lesson to any other species that thinks they can challenge the Scarf Dominion. Admiral Sarah Okafor watched from the bridge of the Indomitable as over 1,500 enemy ships began moving toward her battered fleet. The human forces had fought magnificently, but they had paid a terrible price. Nearly 100 ships had been destroyed or damaged beyond repair. "Admiral," reported Commander Torres, "the entire Scarf fleet is moving to intercept us. They are leaving minimal forces around the planet." Dr. Vasquez appeared on the communication screen, speaking from her position aboard the Defiant Curiosity. "Admiral, this is our chance. The Scarf are so focused on destroying us that they have left the planet nearly undefended." Admiral Okafor nodded. This was the moment she had been planning for since the battle began. The Scarf were doing exactly what she had hoped they would do. They were treating this like a traditional fleet engagement, trying to destroy the human forces in a single decisive battle, but humans did not fight traditional battles. Signal the fleet. Implement Protocol Prometheus. Protocol Prometheus was the most classified battle plan in human military history. It had been developed specifically for fighting hive mind species like the Scarf. The plan was so brutal and complete that it had been locked away in the deepest military archives, marked for use only in the most desperate circumstances. Across the human fleet, communications officers opened sealed orders that had been waiting in their computers since the mission began. Ship captains read the instructions with growing amazement and horror. Captain Santos of the Buenos Aires was the first to respond. "Admiral, are you certain about this? Protocol Prometheus violates every rule of civilized warfare." "Captain, we are not fighting a civilized enemy. We are fighting monsters who enslave and murder peaceful people. They have shown no mercy to the Verdani. We will show no mercy to them." The human fleet split into 3 groups. The largest group, led by Admiral Okafor herself, continued toward the approaching Scarf fleet. This group would keep the enemy's attention focused on the main battle. The second group, led by Captain Williams, began a wide flanking movement around the planet. Their job was to eliminate the remaining Scarf ships in orbit and secure the space around. Kepler-442b. The third group was the smallest but most important. Led by Captain Rivera aboard the Defiant Curiosity, this group had a special mission. They carried equipment that had been hastily installed during the journey to Kepler-442b, equipment that most of the galaxy had never seen before. Dr. Vasquez had spent weeks studying Scarf communication systems. She had discovered something that would change everything. The Scarf hive mind depends on constant communication between all ships and ground forces, she explained to Captain Rivera. They use a specific frequency range that allows thousands of individuals to think and act as one organism. What happens if that communication is disrupted? Individual Scarf lose the ability to make independent decisions. They become confused, helpless, but the disruption has to be total. If even a few command ships remain active, they can restore the network. Captain Rivera understood. So we have to destroy all of their command ships at exactly the same time. Not just destroy them. We have to do something they will never expect. The main battle began when the Scarf fleet met Admiral Okoffer's forces in the space between the planet and its largest moon. 1,500 enemy ships against barely 2 human vessels. By every rule of military strategy, the humans should have been annihilated in minutes. Instead, they disappeared. The human ships activated stealth systems and scattered in all directions. Some hid behind asteroids. Others used the planet's magnetic field to mask their energy signatures. Few simply shut down all systems and drifted like pieces of space debris. The Scarf fleet found itself shooting at empty space. Their sensors could detect energy signatures and movement, but the human ships were doing neither. They had simply vanished. Where did they go? War Master Kethver demanded. Unknown, War Master. All enemy ships have disappeared from our sensors. Kethver was learning that humans did not fight like any other species. They did not follow the rules. They did not behave predictably. They seemed to take pleasure in doing exactly the opposite of what any logical enemy would do. The answer came 30 minutes later when human ships began appearing throughout the Scarf formation. They materialized from behind asteroids, emerged from sensor shadows, and suddenly activated systems that had been completely shut down, but they were not attacking the Scarf ships. They were attacking something else entirely. Every human vessel began broadcasting a specific signal on the exact frequency that the Scarf used for their hive mind communication. Dr. Vasquez had not only identified the frequency, she had learned how to jam it completely. Across the Scarf fleet, chaos erupted. Ships that had been moving in perfect formation suddenly began drifting aimlessly. Captains who had been following precise orders suddenly found themselves unable to think clearly. The hive mind that had made the Scarf so powerful was being torn apart by human interference, but Admiral Okoffer was not satisfied with just disrupting the enemy's communication. She wanted to destroy their ability to coordinate permanently. All ships target command vessels only, ignore everything else. The human fleet began systematically hunting down every Scarf ship that was still transmitting command signals. These were the vessels that controlled hundreds of other ships. If they were destroyed, entire sections of the enemy fleet would become helpless. Captain McKenna of the mining ship Rough Diamond led his improvised weapons platform against a massive Scarf command carrier. The enemy ship was 10 times larger than his vessel and carried enough firepower to destroy a small planet, but the command carrier was not fighting back. Its crew was paralyzed by the communication jamming. They could see the human ship approaching, but they could not decide what to do about it. McKenna's ship was loaded with mining explosives instead of military weapons. When he got close enough, he simply detonated his entire cargo hold. The explosion tore the command carrier apart and took McKenna and his crew with it. Similar scenes played out across the battle zone. Human ships sacrificed themselves to destroy single command vessels, knowing that each command ship destroyed would disable dozens of enemy vessels. Captain Williams led her flanking force around the planet's north pole, hunting for the orbital defense platforms that protected the Scarf mining operations. These platforms were heavily armed and shielded, designed to destroy any ship that tried to interfere with the planet-wide strip mining, but the platforms were also controlled by the same communication network that was being jammed. As Captain Williams approached, she could see Scarf soldiers running frantically around the platform's weapon stations, trying to manually operate systems that were designed for hive mind control. All ships concentrate fire on Platform Alpha, full weapons spread. 20 human ships opened fire on a single orbital platform. The structure's shields held for almost a minute before collapsing. The platform exploded in a massive fireball that lit up the planet's night side. One by one, the orbital platforms were destroyed. The space around Kepler 442b, which had been controlled by the Scarf for 3 months, was suddenly free on the planet's surface. Elder Thornweave felt the ground shake as another orbital platform exploded above them. He had been working in the mines for so long that he had almost forgotten what hope felt like. But now, for the first time in months, something was happening that the Scarf had not planned. "Elder," whispered Brightbark, who had somehow managed to keep a hidden communication device working, "I am detecting new signals in orbit. Unknown ships are attacking the Scarf fleet." Thornweave's leaves, which had been gray with despair for months, began to show the faintest hint of green. Who would come to help us? The Galactic Cooperative abandoned us long ago. I do not know who they are, but they are winning. The Scarf orbital stations are being destroyed one by one. Around them, Scarf guards were acting strangely. Instead of their usual mechanical efficiency, they seemed confused and disorganized. Some were running in circles. Others had simply stopped moving entirely. Captain Rivera led his special mission, grouped directly toward the planet's surface. His ships carried the most important part of Protocol Prometheus, ground-based jamming stations that would make the communication disruption permanent. But first they had to eliminate every Scarf presence on the planet itself. The Defiant Curiosity and 12 other ships entered the planet's atmosphere in a screaming dive that would have been suicide against an organized defense. But the Scarf surface forces were as confused as their space fleet. Anti-aircraft batteries fired randomly or not at all. Dr. Vasquez monitored the enemy communications as they descended toward the main mining complex. "Captain, the Scarf ground forces are trying to restore their communication network manually. If they succeed, they could regain control of their orbital fleet. How long do we have?" "Maybe an hour before they figure out a workaround." "Captain." Rivera opened a channel to his small fleet. "All ships, this is our only chance. We eliminate every Scarf on this planet in the next 60 minutes, or they will recover and destroy the main fleet." The human ships spread out across the planet's surface, hunting down every Scarf installation they could find. They were not just liberating the planet. They were making sure that the Scarf could never return. The mining complex where Elder Thornweave was imprisoned was one of the first targets. Captain Rivera brought his ship down in the middle of the facility, landing gear smashing through the metal buildings that the Scarf had built on top of the Verdani ruins. Human soldiers poured out of the ship, armed with weapons specifically designed to fight in close quarters. They moved through the complex like avenging angels, freeing prisoners and eliminating guards. Elder Thornweave saw humans for the first time when Captain Rivera found him in his cage. The human was smaller than a Verdani, but moved with a deadly efficiency that the peaceful plant people had never seen before. "We are here to help," Captain Rivera said, using a translation device. "Can you walk?" Thornweave's leaves were turning bright green for the first time in months. "You came. After all this time, someone actually came. We are sorry it took so long. We came as fast as we could." All across the planet, similar rescue operations were taking place. Human ships landed at every mining site, prison camp, and Scarf facility. The enemy forces, cut off from their command structure, were unable to coordinate any effective resistance. Some Scarf tried to surrender, but the humans ignored them. Dr. Vasquez had made it clear that the Scarf were biologically incapable of true surrender. They would simply wait for an opportunity to rejoin their hive and continue fighting. Captain Santos led a ground assault on the largest Scarfed fortress, a massive structure built on the ruins of New Grove City. The fortress was defended by hundreds of Scarfed warriors, but they were fighting as individuals instead of a coordinated force. "Remember what these monsters did to innocent people," Santos told her soldiers as they prepared for the final assault. "No mercy, no prisoners, we end this here." The battle for the fortress lasted 6 hours. When it was over, there were no living Scarf left on Kepler 442b. In space, the main battle was reaching its conclusion. Admiral Okafor's fleet had destroyed every Scarf command ship they could find. The enemy fleet, once a perfectly coordinated fighting force, had become a collection of individual ships with no central control. Most of the Scarfed vessels had simply shut down, their crews unable to function without constant guidance from the hive mind. Others had tried to retreat but were hunted down by human ships that showed no mercy. War Master Kethver, trapped aboard his flagship with no way to communicate with the rest of his fleet, finally understood what he was facing. These humans did not fight wars. They fought exterminations. His ship was surrounded by human vessels that fired constantly but did not try to board or capture. They wanted him dead, not defeated. They wanted his entire species to understand that attacking innocent people would have consequences. The Death's Edge exploded with all hands aboard. When the battle ended, not a single Scarf ship remained in the Kepler system. Some had been destroyed. Others had been disabled and left drifting in space, their crews dead or dying. A few had tried to escape to hyperspace but had been caught and destroyed by human pursuit ships. Admiral Okafor stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, looking at a tactical display that showed no enemy contacts. For the first time in days, space around Kepler 442b was peaceful. "Admiral," reported Commander Torres, "we are receiving a transmission from the planet's surface. It is Elder Thornweave of the Verdani." The main screen showed the interior of what had once been a Scarfed command bunker. Elder Thornweave stood among the ruins, his leaves bright green with joy and relief. Behind him, other Verdani were emerging from hiding places where they had survived the occupation. "Thank you," Thornweave said, his voice carrying across space to the human fleet. "We had given up hope. We believed help would never arrive, but you came anyway." Admiral Okafor felt tears in her eyes. "We are sorry we could not come sooner. Too many of your people died while we were getting here. You came when no one else would. You fought when no one else could. That is all that matters now." Dr. Vasquez appeared on another screen, speaking from the planet's surface. "Admiral, we have established contact with Verdani survivors across the planet. The Scarfs destroyed most of their cities and killed about 80% of the population. But the survivors are already talking about rebuilding. What do they need? Medical supplies, food, construction materials. But most of all, they need time to heal." Admiral Okafor nodded. "They will have all the time they need. Signal Earth Command. Tell them that Kepler 442b is now under human protection." News of the Battle of Kepler 442b spread across the galaxy faster than any government could control. The story was too big, too shocking, too important to be hidden. A species that the Galactic Cooperative had written off as acceptable losses had been saved by humans who traveled hundreds of light years to fight an enemy they had never met. The human fleet had not just won a victory. They had won so completely that they had rewritten the rules of galactic warfare. The Scarf Dominion, learning that their largest fleet had been completely destroyed, abandoned 3 other conquest campaigns and retreated to their core worlds. Other aggressive species quietly canceled expansion plans. The message was clear throughout the galaxy. There were now 2 types of worlds, those under human protection and those that might be. Ambassador Thylix of the Altarian Republic sent a formal complaint to Earth, protesting human interference in galactic affairs. Admiral Okafor's response became legendary throughout human space. "When innocent people are dying and you choose to do nothing, do not complain when others choose to do something." 6 months later, Elder Thornweave stood in the rebuilt center of New Grove City, watching Verdani children play among the new growing trees. The city was different from what it had been before, stronger, more beautiful, built with help from human engineers who understood that some things were worth protecting. A human ship appeared in orbit, bringing medical supplies and messages from Earth. The humans had kept their promise. Kepler 442b was under their protection now, and the humans took their promises seriously. Thornweave's leaves turned the golden color of deep contentment as he watched the children play. When other species asked him about humanity, his answer was always the same. They came when no one else would. They fought when no one else could. And they left nothing standing between us and freedom. The galaxy would remember the Battle of Kepler 442b for 1,000 years, not just as a military victory, but as the moment when humanity defined itself. The moment when a young species showed the ancient powers of the galaxy what it really meant to be civilized. Help had arrived. And it was absolutely terrifying. But if you were innocent, if you were peaceful, if you were just trying to live your life and grow your gardens and raise your children, it was also the most beautiful thing in the universe, because now you knew that somewhere in the dark between, the stars humans were watching. And humans did not abandon their friends.